friends, my name is Abdul Qadir Arsiwala and today we will be discussing a very simple problem of income from salaries. In this problem, we won't be discussing any perquisites. This is the first problem of our lecture series, so we will just be discussing the format of how income from salaries sums are solved, and we will also discuss some of the basic allowances which are frequently asked in your examinations. So let us first of all read the problem which is given. You can pause the video here and take a screenshot or note down the question which we will be discussing today. Shri Pradeep Gujarati submits the following details of his income, that is salary income, for the year 2019-20. Assessment here is 2019-20 and he is submitting the following details. Basic salary 8,000 per month, DNS allowance 5,000 per month, travelling allowance 6,000, actual expenditure 5,200, city compensation allowance 4,000, conveyance allowance, children education allowance, uniform allowance and medical allowance. Okay, all allowances are given and we need to compute his gross salary for the assessment year 2019-20. We just need to compute his gross salary. We do not have to compute his total income. So we will start with the problem. We will make a format of computation sheet of income from salary. The heading of that format we will give as follows: computation of income from salary of Mr. Pradeep, and for which assessment year we are solving? For assessment year 2019-20. This shall be the heading of your format. After that, you shall make two columns for two amounts and one particulars column. The format should be as follows. Once you have made this format, we can start solving the sum. So your first information which is given is basic salary is 8,000 per month. So I will just write it here. Basic salary is 8,000 rupees per month. So I will write it as follows: 8,000 multiplied by 12. Okay, 8,000 multiplied by 12, it comes to 96,000 rupees. That is the basic salary. The next thing which is given in the sum is dearness allowance. Now, before we start discussion on allowances, I will just like to shortly introduce the allowances to you. There are two types of allowance. One is the allowances which are received in professional capacity and second, the allowances which are not received in professional capacity. Okay, one by one we will be discussing these allowances, but before that, before we go to the discussion of allowances, I want you to note down all the allowances which we will be discussing in the chapter on salaries. So official allowances are 6 official allowances: travelling allowance, daily allowance, conveyance allowance, helper allowance, academic allowance and uniform allowance. Okay, whenever you get any of the 6 allowances, what you will do is the deduction for these allowances will be available for actual amount spent for the specified purpose. For example, if you receive a travelling allowance of say 5,000 rupees and you have spent only 4,000 rupees for travelling, so deduction which will be allowed will be for 4,000 rupees and the extra 1,000 which you have not spent will be taxable as income from salary. Okay, that is the tax treatment for official allowances. Besides these official allowances, there are certain allowances which are not of official nature. They are given here as follows: allowances which are fully taxable. Okay, here no deduction is allowable for these allowances. In that there are 9 allowances: dearness allowance, city compensation allowance, medical allowance, lunch, dinner, refreshment or tiffin allowance, overtime allowance, servant allowance, warden allowance, non-practicing allowance and family allowance. If you get to see any of these allowances in your problem, straight away you will write the entire amount in the amount column. No deduction is available for these types of allowances. Other than this, there are certain other allowances which are partly taxable and partly exempted. These are those allowances. One is the children allowance, hostel allowance, transport allowance, tribal area allowance, allowance for transport employees, underground or mining allowance and field area allowances. Now, for each of these allowances, separate deduction is given and we have to remember which the amount of deduction and apply those deductions in the problems. And lastly, there are certain allowances which are fully exempt. Some of them are allowances to citizen of India who is a government employee and rendering services outside India, allowances to High Court and Supreme Court judges, and allowances which are received by an employees of United Nations organization. Okay, so if any allowances are received by these three category of people, then there is no tax on such amount. Entire amount is tax free, entire amount is exempt. So you can pause the video here and note down all these allowances, or either way you can take a screenshot of these allowances and use them for your further references. Now, when we are solving the problem one by one, we will refer to this table also. Now, first allowance is the dearness allowance of 5,000 rupees. So, in the main sum, I will write dearness allowance 5,000 multiplied by 12. We are finding out the yearly figures. 5,000 into 12 will get 60,000. Entire amount of DA I have written in the amount column. Why so? Because see, dearness allowance is fully taxable allowance. Dearness allowance is fully taxable. Hence, entire amount of DA. See, entire amount of DA. 5,000 is the amount of DA. Entire amount of this DA I have written in the sum. Okay, understood? Now, next point. Travelling allowance rupees 6,000 and actual expenditure 5,200. Now let us again refer to our table. Travelling allowance comes under official allowances, and for official allowances deduction is available for actual amount spent for specified purposes. So here what we will do, how much travelling allowance we have received? 6,000. And how much is the actual expenditure? 5,200. So tax treatment will be as follows. Travelling allowance received. Travelling allowance received, we have received 6,000 as travelling allowance, and from that 6,000, see, from that 6,000, 5,200 we have spent for official purposes. So amount spent for official purposes will be written here, and that amount will be deducted. And the remaining amount will be the chargeable amount. So 6,000 minus 5,200 will be 800 rupees will be the taxable value of travelling allowance, and that 800 I will write in the outer column. See, inner column is reserved only for working allowances, and outer column is reserved for the main amounts. Okay, so taxable value of travelling allowance is 800. Next, city compensation allowance 4,000 rupees. Now let us look at where city compensation allowance stands. It is not an official allowance. It comes here, city compensation allowance, fully taxable. So just like dearness allowance, city compensation allowance is also fully taxable. I will write it here, city compensation allowance. How much is the amount of city compensation allowance? Let us look at that. City compensation allowance is 4,000 rupees. per month figure, it is not written per month, so we will assume that 4,000 rupees per year this amount we have received. So we will not multiply it by 12. In the earlier points we multiplied it by 12 because per month figures were available. Nothing is written against 4,000 rupees, so we will assume that this is the annual figure and we will write 4,000 rupees in the outer column of our problem. The next is conveyance allowance of 400 per month and actual expenditure is 550 per month. Here the actual expenditure is greater than conveyance allowance which has been received, so nothing is been left with the employee. There is no benefit in the hands of the employee, so nothing will be chargeable. Still, let us just look at where conveyance allowance stands. Conveyance allowance is an official allowance, so whatever we receive from that, amount spent for actual conveyance will be deducted. So let us solve that. Conveyance allowance 400 rupees per month, conveyance allowance 400 multiplied by 12 per month hai, so we will write 400 multiplied by 12. 400 multiplied by 12 gives us an amount of 4,800 less amount spent for official purposes. How much amount we have spent for official purposes? See the problem? How much amount? Yes, 550 rupees per month. Now see, the actual expenditure is greater than what we have received. So we cannot write negative figures here. We cannot write 5,500 multiplied by 12 and then reduce that amount from this 4,800. We cannot do that. See what will happen. We cannot write like this 5,500 multiplied by 12. Okay, this cannot be done. Why? Because the amount which we will get will be greater than the amount which we have received. What comes? 550 multiplied by 12. See, it comes 6,600. We cannot subtract 6,600 from 4,800. Okay, so what we can do here is we can, instead of writing 550 into 12, we can write entire amount is exempted. Entire amount is exempted and entire amount comes to 4,800 which we have received. This entire amount will be exempted and in the outer column we will write 0. Okay, next. Children education allowance of 9,000 for 3 children and actual expenditure is 12,000 rupees. Now, children education allowance, let us look at where this comes. It does not come under official allowance, it does not come under fully taxable allowance, but it does come under the partly taxable allowance, children education allowance. Okay, so rule for children education allowance is given here. Maximum deduction under children education allowance is rupees 100 per month per child up to maximum of 2 children. You can have more than 2 children, but you cannot have a deduction for more than 2 children. You will get a maximum deduction for 2 children only. Okay, so suppose you are having 3 children, you cannot claim deduction for 3 children. You can claim a deduction only for maximum of 2 children. So 100 rupees per month per child. So for one child, annual maximum deduction will be 100 multiplied by 12, that is 1200 rupees, and for 2 child the maximum deduction which will be allowed under this section is 2,400. See, in sum, the problem which we are solving, certain additional information is given. This additional information is only to confuse the students while attempting the sum. Whenever you are getting children education allowance or any other partly taxable allowances, the actual expenditure does not have any role to play here. It is just given to confuse you. Okay, you just have to apply the provisions of the act. Here children education allowance, we have received 9,000 for 3 children. So what is the actual received amount? 9,000 for 3 children. I'll write that amount here. Children education allowance 9,000 rupees for 3 children. So I'll write received here in brackets, received, and how much we have received? 9,000 we have received. And how much is exempted? Less exempted. According to rule, how much is exempted? 100 rupees per month per child into maximum of 2 children. So 100 multiplied by 12 months multiplied by 2 children. Okay, we will receive the deduction only for 2 children and not 3 children. So the amount comes to 2,400 rupees. Amount comes to 2,400 rupees, and we will deduct this amount from the actual received amount, and 6,600 will be the taxable value of children education allowance. The next is uniform allowance 450 and actual expenditure 400. Now let us see where the uniform allowance comes. Uniform allowance comes under the category of official allowances. Okay, so for uniform allowance we will write uniform allowance, official allowance it is. So amount spent for uniform or amount spent for maintaining uniform will be allowed as deduction. How much amount we are getting? Uniform allowance we are getting 450 per month. So 450 multiplied by 12, not 2. How much it comes? 450 multiplied by 12, it comes to 5,400. From that we will deduct less, same as above, amount spent for official purposes. Okay, amount spent for official purposes. How much amount we are spending for official purposes? In the problem it is given 400 rupees per month we are spending for official purposes for maintaining that uniform. See, 400 is the actual expenditure. So that actual expenditure will be deducted, 4,800 will be deducted, and the amount will be 600 chargeable to tax. Now keep in mind one thing, if there are official allowances, if an allowance is an official allowance, then actual expenditure will be deducted from the received amount. See, traveling allowance also, it was official, so actual expenditure was deducted from the received amount. But if the allowances is not an official allowance, okay, it is a personal allowance, then the actual expenditure will not be deducted. We saw this in children education allowance. Children education allowance is not an official allowance. See, children education allowance is not an official allowance. It does not come here. Children education allowance comes here as a personal allowance. So for that, actual expenditure will not be considered. We will have to apply the rules of that particular provision to solve personal allowances. But as far as official allowances are concerned, you will straight away deduct the actual expenditure from the amount which has been received by you towards that particular allowance. Okay, so uniform allowance we have done. Next is medical allowance. This is the last entry, medical allowance. For medical allowance, let us look at where the medical allowance stands. It does not feature in the official allowance, it does not come there, but it does come over here. Medical allowance is a fully taxable personal allowance. Medical allowance is a fully taxable allowance. So again, actual expenditure is just given to confuse you. Medical allowance is a fully taxable allowance. Entire 3,000 rupees will be taxable. Entire 3,000 rupees I will write as taxable. Okay, so in this way we have solved the entire sum. We have solved all these entries. Now just take the total of the outer column of the computation sheet. Just take a total. It will come 1,71,000, and this is gross salary of Mr. Pradeep. So this is how the computation for income from salaries is done. It is fairly simple. You just have to remember the rules of allowances. As we progress in the next problems, we will start off with some lengthy allowances and gradually will shift towards the perquisites. I hope you understood the today's lecture, and with that I would like to take your leave. Thank you very much.